Hafaday, and welcome to this series about ancient sites and traditions of Micronesia. These episodes introduce the latest research and discussions about ancient life, history, and cultural traditions all across our diverse region of Micronesia. I hope that you like this series, and I look forward to learning more together. At many ancient sites, the patterns and distributions of artifacts and food middens reflect how people used their households and other areas differently. One study of shellfish remains is presented here by Antonio Roldan.
Hafaday, my name is Rico Roldan, and I am presenting on my thesis from my master's program, Mollusk Foraging and Gendered Labor During the Spanish Contact Period in Guam, Mariana Islands. This presentation addresses the continuation of many groundbreaking studies recently conducted in this regard in the Mariana Islands. The village of Ritidian is unique because of its habitation is synchronic, comparing two contemporaneous Ladi buildings that were part of a single integrated multi-building household. Further examination of traditional Chamorro household organization may have implications for how other households in the Marianas Islands, including but not restricted to Guam, were organized during and before the Spanish contact period. Guam embodies the complex outcomes of long-term natural and cultural history within a 3,500-year material record of heritage resources unrivaled in the remote Western Pacific. The year 1521 was the first documented instance of European contact in Oceania. During the ensuing decades, the Spanish documented various traditional Chamorro practices, providing current scholars with much-needed insights into how the Chamorro people were economically organized. In recent times, the people of Guam have been profoundly interested in documenting and regaining control of their traditional cultural heritage narrative. They have done so by applying archaeology to independently assess the economic organization of traditional domestic household structures with respect to gendered labor. Current studies exploring various roles and identities within a cultural context have become an essential aspect of archaeology because gender, status, age, roles in society, and other dimensions of variability profoundly impact worldview and how others perceive it. Ritidian is one of the oldest known habitation sites in the Marianas and in the entirety of the remote oceanic world, with initial sediments predating the Lapidot legacy in Melanesia and Polynesia between 1500 and 1100 BC. Our current site for the study is located at the northern tip of Guam. The Spanish contact period occurred between 1565 and 1898. During this time, the Spanish produced documentation of how traditional Chamorro culture was implemented, and Ritidian was eventually forcibly abandoned in 1682 during La Reducción. This is a photograph of the completed excavation of Ladi Set 1. In the summers of 2012 to 2014, the University of Hawaii at Manoa and the University of Guam Mark Field School had a collaborative excavation which focused on two sets of Ladi that were part of a single multi-building household. Ladi 1 is referred to as the women's workspace, and Ladi 2 is the men's space. The contents revealed in its stratigraphy are from a fixed period of activity between the 1500s and 1700. Based on the stratigraphy and layout of the site, its cultural materials, and Spanish documents, the Ladi houses were used shortly before La Reducción in the late 1600s. A couple of research questions I had going into this project. What was the spatial distribution of the mollusk shells within the multi-building household? And does the distribution of the mollusk shells illuminate anything about the gendered labor hypothesis originally opposed by Bayman et al.? So oral traditions actually reveal a division of labor according to sex and caste, where women typically made herbal medicines in coconut oil, manufactured pots, wove mats and other articles to display or store food, and cooked with other women, while men built houses and canoes, fashioned tools, and fishing gears from wood, stone, and shell. Another facet of economic labor division in traditional Chamorro culture was the Mangkalamia. Children were typically socialized into a specific gender role to learn crafting from a same-sex parent or other relative in a wide range of skilled but unspecialized tasks, except in certain cases where an individual exhibited expertise in the tasks ascribed to the opposite gender, such as weaving. When compared to the Aikapu system in Hawaii and other separate eating spaces, Miller et al. Contemplated the possibility that women and pre-adolescent children prepared and consumed their meals in vessels at Ladi 1, while men consumed food from smaller serving vessels at the adjacent Ladi building where they engaged in other craft work. This is a chart that I created of known mollusk usage in traditional culture. So I broke it down by genus and whether or not it was food, tool, jewelry, or shell money. So aquatic fauna was a main source of animal proteins. They were often confined to a group's district. The men of the chiefly class could fish and navigate the open ocean on deep sea fishing excavations. Chamorro women's matrilineal ties to the land and child rearing kept them within the limits of their village. They would gather strombus and other easily obtained shellfish within the lagoon. They serve as an efficient and a sustained protein staple. They dwell in predictable locations and are universally exploited by all group members. In addition to their value as a source of protein, marine shells also played a vital role in ancient political economies, functioning as prestige goods. Shell ornaments, such as conus and spondylus, marked social status attributes such as rank, clan membership, and leadership. Other shells, such as Isignomon and Tridacna, proved useful as tools. The methodology of this project was broken down into 4 parts. So the time frame for the data collection occurred between June 5th and June 25th. The study chose a checkerboard sample of 8 units from the 32 excavations for an even coverage of the back patios. I recorded NISP and aggregate weight. I was unable to record M&I counts due to time constraints. And I removed the land snails from my data analysis since the focus was on marine shell and sorted shell tools. This picture that you see here is a representative sample. You can see a good number of the specimens are identifiable but highly fragmented. The color has been leached out due to in situ degradation, but can still identify based on the morphology of the shell. I pointed out predominant habitats, the gender and status of mollusk harvesters, potentially, genera found in each habitat with total NISP counts, and NISP likely attributed to each habitat. As you can see from the final column, the sandy substrate, which is the beachy areas, had the highest concentration of shell midden, and the fringing coral reef was second. Freshwater and above sea were not really well represented in this particular sample. For this comparison, mollusks were ranked and statistical calculations of density, diversity, richness, and evenness were compared for both Ladi sets. Quantifying biodiversity aims to describe general properties of communities for comparing different regions, taxa, and trophic levels despite a lack of consensus. Density measures the volume of species per area excavated. Diversity appraises species abundance. Basically, the higher the index, the more diverse the species are in habitat. And richness calculates the number of species within a habitat, and evenness represents their relative abundance. These are all important factors in determining differences between the men and women's labor spaces. So the results from Ladi Set 1, the mollusk assemblage exhibited a great deal of diversity in respect to its families, genera, and species. Conus, turbo, and canarium were among the most common gastropods in terms of NISP. Canarium, formerly classified as strombus, is a preferred food mollusk typically boiled in coconut milk before consumption. This finding aligns with the concentration of textured surface sherds from ceramic vessels used for cooking at Ladi 1. The turbo fragments within the collection were common and were likely produced by cooking techniques and manufacturing associated with betel nut or pugo chewing, which is a common social practice among both men and women. Pugo was traditionally kept in a small container made from coconut shell, bamboo, or marine shell, such as turbo. As noted earlier, the Tridacna shells were removed from the study. In a comparative ethnographic study in Fiji, Jones and Quinn observed women and adolescents conducting inshore fishing 3 to 6 days a week, regularly consuming shellfish in small quantities. Their study revealed how women and children typically eat shellfish as a snack while fishing along the shore, and children crack open shellfish and snack on them while roaming the reefs of the low tide. The mollusk shell assemblage from Ladi 2 exhibits an eager statistical measure of diversity. It was represented by 26 families, 26 genera, and 26 identified species. The test units associated with the men's space was characterized as associated with crafting activities that were signaled by its abundance of shell adzes, fish hooks, and more than 11 times the beads found in Lottie Set 1. Canarium in particular comprises of an astonishing 19.94% of the entire collection, though they were recovered from a Lottie building that lacked hearths, and instead contained relatively small ceramic vessels for food consumption. Cypraea and Monoteria were documented as being made into shell money, while Trochus and Conus shells were often bisected into jewelry, which may, along with the large number of beads discovered within, suggests that jewelry making was largely a man's task. The mollusk assemblage from Lottie Set 2 also yielded more unidentified shells than Lottie 1, which may indicate behavioral practices relating to shell processing and other formation processes. The finer fragments are likely to be the byproducts of tool making, but they also may relate to the smashing of mollusk shells or near their apex to release internal pressure and extract their flesh. The proportions in each set show a 22.4% difference in density between the Lottie sets, with Lottie Set 2 boasting more diversity in marine mollusks and a higher concentration of Conus and Tridacna, accounting for 37% of the entire assemblage. This could mean that the denizens of this household were not necessarily pulling from different sources since they are so close together. Perhaps they removed the empty shells and discarded them before serving. Another possibility is that everyone, men, women, and children all ate together in Lottie Set 2, which could also account for the greater diversity in genera at the men's Lottie. The greater diversity of genera at men's Lottie questions whether this is symptomatic of a broader catchment of their economic activities, such as deep water fishing. Marine shell ornaments may have circulated through ethnographically documented customs, recounting the Kula ring in the Trobriand Islands or the Sawe tribute system in Micronesia. The spatial distribution of shellfish in this particular multi-building household suggests that A, men were consuming and discarding a wider variety of mollusks within their building. B, the inhabitants of this household had different levels of access during certain species. And C, the men, women, and children gathered to eat together within the men's Lottie set. The current research direction of this project is how does the mollusk assemblage at this Lottie household compare with other contemporaneous households in Guam and elsewhere in the Mariana Islands? This is only a screenshot of a very old village. So how does it compare to other such famous sites as the House of Taga or other Micronesian villages? How does this particular household complex compare to Lottie households prior to Spanish contact? Why are certain mollusk genera only present at the women's Lottie, whereas other mollusk genera are only present at the men's Lottie? Again, that goes into a deep dive into cultural customs. And how might more detailed research on the taphonomy of the mollusk assemblage at Retidian further clarify their use and discard? This study compared two contemporaneous Lottie buildings that were part of a single integrated multi-building household. It provided a valuable baseline of information on marine resource use in a traditional Pacific Island society. Given the modest amount of protein and calories that are required for foraging for mollusks, it was likely embedded to other economic activities such as net fishing, etc. And this sets the stage for new research on mollusk foraging and gendered labor in the Mariana Islands. I would like to give a thank you and a sius ma'asi to Dr. Mike Carson, Dr. Hiro Kuroshina, and Dr. Rebecca Stevenson for their guidance and support, and to Dr. Jim Bayman for all that he's done in terms of my research.
Thank you for joining us in learning about ancient sites and traditions of Micronesia. If you would like to learn more details, then I encourage you to visit, in person or online, the Micronesian Area Research Center of the University of Guam. Thank you again for watching this program. I hope that you will continue to explore and discover more.